After the break in London, the teenager radicalised online who was plotting attacks on police officers and an army barracks. Tonight, the teenager and an imminent terror attack in London. Matthew King was radicalised online during the pandemic. His targets included police officers and an army barracks.
I felt an attack was imminent. The risk to the public was now too great. Our assurance around that risk could only be met by disrupting this individual's activity.
It was King's mum who reported him. Today, he was jailed for life. Also on the programme, concern for the asylum seekers sleeping on the streets outside a hotel. Train strikes threaten a big weekend of events. Hammer time, West Ham prepare for their first final in decades, and
fallen foul of the new park rules that now come with a fine.
Good evening. The potential targets in Stratford included the army barracks, police officers and a railway station. Matthew King could have been hours away from carrying out his first terrorist attack when he was arrested. The fact he was is largely thanks to the teenager's mum. Today, he was jailed for life. The 19-year-old was radicalised alone online during the pandemic. Carolyn Sim has been looking at how an immature young man became a would-be terrorist.
At just 19 years old, Matthew King went from converting to Islam to plotting terrorist attacks, radicalising himself online from his bedroom in Wickford. In the weeks before his arrest, King was spotted multiple times on CCTV, staking out places where he could attack. At Stratford Magistrates Court, he posted a video of 4 police officers with the message, "Target acquired." At Stratford Army Barracks, he was seen watching late at night. And at Stratford train station, he followed a police officer saying there's another one over there as well.
While he was at Stratford station, King was chatting online to a girl who the court referred to as Miss A. They discussed going to Syria to take part in jihad, to kill non-believers and die as martyrs. In one message a few days later, the pair described in graphic detail how they would mutilate and torture a British soldier.
King's phone contained videos of himself expressing a desire to kill, of Daesh propaganda, suicide bombers and mass executions. Extensive searches had been made about terror attacks in London, Manchester and America. Police discovered clothing and specialist equipment in his bedroom and an online account with the retailer Knife Warehouse on his phone.
I felt an attack was imminent. The risk to the public was now too great. Our assurance around that risk could only be met by disrupting this individual's activity before he had the opportunity to launch an attack.
It was King's mother who referred him to the authorities. She was so worried about his extremist views. And when he was arrested, he'd asked officers if the tactical vests they were wearing were bulletproof. Sentencing King, the judge said there was no doubt he was a danger to the public.
The risks around you, albeit as a young man, are clear and concerning. The way in which you say some things to professionals and yet say the contrary to others means that there is, in my judgment, no clear picture of when those risks may abate.
King will serve a minimum of 6 years behind bars and will be on licence for the rest of his life. Carolyn Sim, ITV News.
Joining me now is security expert Dr. Sally Leavesley. Sally, because he was acting alone, how important was the intelligence from his mother?
I think we should all be very grateful for the fact that the mother was recognising the change in behaviour, and there must have been some urgency in the way she did contact the police, because she, as a mother, was very sensitive to what was happening within this young man's mind.
The Met's Terrorism Command singled out young men on their own as a real source of concern at the moment. Why is that?
Well, it is, because in the way we see them behaving, people who self-radicalise are actually, some of them are choosing terrorism as a career. And they self-train, they perceive themselves in dress-up, as we've seen. This young man ordered certain items to wear, like goggles and gloves. They put themselves into the role and they fantasise themselves, particularly in the way they're going to kill people. And in that they're expressing, in the serious ones, they're expressing a wish to see blood and mutilation.
What's the significance of the knife retailer that Carolyn mentioned in her report?
It's very interesting because, as we know, terrorists are very, very careful, and we've seen in some attacks on London where there's been a movement into a shop to grab a knife and then try and kill someone. The ordering online and having an online account means that the weapon will not be with the terrorist until the last minute. So if there's a search of the house, the weapons aren't there.
So that level of thought is going into it.
It's part of deception, but remember, people training online and talking to other people are getting this information. This young man was operating, however, for a long time in plain sight of a very wide community. He was in the mosques, he was seen filming, he was doing reconnaissance of locations, obviously. But his mother eventually reported him, and as the police said, he was very close to potentially doing a bad deed.
Well, it sounds like you're saying there could have been other opportunities for people to report him. And interestingly, the Met's Terrorism Command also said, well, they acknowledge that public confidence is a real challenge at the moment. Why do you think they say that? Yes,
it's been a worry to me for some time as well, because with these single operators, this young man was assessed by the judge as being a risk potentially to kill a person rather than a mass murderer. But they can be mass murderers. And unless the community has confidence in the police, unfortunately, the police can't pick up these individuals because they'll have a clean past history, and in a group where there is a much greater chance in a group of picking it up with intelligence, these young ones can slip through. They don't have a past history. So the community has to stop them. But operating in plain sight for this length of time without other reports also is a worry that the community isn't picking up the telephone and contacting the police.
That's interesting. Dr. Sally Leasley, thank you so much. Asylum seekers say they felt forced to sleep on the street in Whitechapel after refusing to sleep in what they called unsuitable accommodation provided by the Home Office. Around 30 asylum seekers were allegedly told they needed to share single rooms with 4 people without beds. They instead slept outside in makeshift cardboard boxes. Anila Dami reports.
They're seeking refuge here, but on Wednesday night, these individuals slept with their belongings on Whitechapel Road after allegedly being forced to share single rooms with at least 4 people.
It was very, very cold. I needed clothes, food, money. It was very bad. The hotel didn't give us food.
This man, who wants to remain anonymous, fled Iran in 2021 and is in his 4th temporary accommodation. He says the streets were a better option than sharing a room with strangers.
It was better to sleep outside because it's the street. Single. I have depression. One friend has an allergy. And another person is sick.
At around 9 p.m. on Wednesday, the group of around 30 from places like Afghanistan and Syria were removed from a hotel in Ilford. 12 were allegedly promised their own room in Tower Hamlets, but upon arrival, some rooms allegedly had no beds or bedding. Abdi Hassan has been helping them and says the family also slept on the streets with 2 children and a 3-year-old, and that there's concerns around the group's physical and mental well-being.
I think anyone would perhaps resist that around safeguarding or just basic security concerns. And it's about how the Home Office has treated people, how inhumane the services have been.
Whitechapel Road is a busy road, and we've been told a 3-year-old was sleeping on the street. It raises a number of questions, like is there a basic requirement needed when it comes to housing those seeking asylum? Why are people who are seeking asylum being moved from accommodation to accommodation? And are there others in a similar situation across London? And if so, how many? We put those to the Home Office who haven't responded, but in regards to the situation in Whitechapel, they've said in a statement, the accommodation offered to asylum seekers by providers on a no-choice basis is of a decent standard and meets all legal and contractual requirements. and that despite the number of people arriving in the UK reaching record levels, they continue to provide accommodation at a cost of £6 million a day. Meanwhile, a different group of 40 asylum seekers apparently ended up spending 2 nights on the street in protest against what they deemed inappropriate accommodation. The leader of Westminster Council has written to the Home Secretary with his concerns, and the Home Office have issued the same statement. An agreement has now been reached to house 2 people per room in Whitechapel, but the people here are still hoping to get a room of their own. Anila Dami, ITV News.
Police trying to identify a man who was found dead in the undercarriage of a plane at Gatwick Airport have released this EFIT image. The man's body was discovered after a TUI flight from the Gambia landed at the airport last December. He's believed to have been in his 20s or 30s. The number of Transport for London staff paid a 6-figure salary has risen by 28% in the last year. The spokesperson for Sadiq Khan said the mayor has stood by his commitment to deliver fair pay rises during the cost of living crisis. And security guards at Heathrow Airport are to stage a series of 33 new strikes in a dispute over pay. The Unite Union said the industrial action will take place on almost every weekend from mid-June until the end of August. And in more misery, strike misery, rail passengers today saw the latest round of strikes begin. Members of the RMT union in England walked out in a long-running dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Tomorrow, members of ASLEF, the train drivers union, go on strike, which will leave only 40% of services running. Our reporter Hannah Kings is at King's Cross Station for us now. Hannah, it is a big weekend of events in London, so how much of an impact is this likely to have?
Well, it is almost a year since those first train strikes last June, but passengers are again battling disruption today. And there is more to come. It means that thousands who were planning to travel to the capital by rail this weekend for major sport and music events will have to find other ways to travel. Spectators heading for the FA Cup final at Wembley tomorrow, the England-Ireland cricket test at Lord's and the Epsom Derby may all have their train travel disrupted. And Beyoncé is playing the last UK dates of her current tour in Tottenham this weekend, so tens of thousands more expected to be travelling for that. I met the RMT's General Secretary this morning to talk about the disruption that these strikes are likely to cause.
We sympathise with all those other people in our communities who've got their lives disrupted, who are also suffering from austerity and the cost of living crisis. But if working people don't hold out for decent terms and conditions and a decent deal off their employer, we're all going to be poorer.
The RMT has so far rejected pay rise offers because of the conditions that come with them, which include reforms to the way the rail network is run. But train companies say they are necessary to keep up with the changing ways that passengers are using the railway. But after almost 12 months of strikes, passengers I've spoken to today say they would just be relieved to be able to rely on trains running at all. Some better news for Londoners this weekend is that tubes will not be affected by these strikes, but they may be busier than usual because of those major events that are taking place.
OK, Hannah, thank you. Next tonight to a world first and how a new method of surgery could revolutionise the way tumours are removed. The robotic technique has been pioneered by scientists at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital and minimises recovery time and trauma. As Harry Fawcett reports, its success with patients here means it will be rolled out across the UK and beyond.
A world first for this London team. Surgeons at Guy's Hospital are pioneering the use of a robotic system designed for abdominal and urological surgery to operate on the throat. 4 arms moving independently but in concert, guided by a surgeon with a close-up view through 3D glasses, making it possible to cut away tumours without any external incisions.
It's harnessing the best of what we have in terms of medical technology to allow us to do an operation in a less invasive way. What that does is it translates to better patient outcome, not only in terms of cure, but also in terms of swallow and speech.
Asit Arora was the first UK-based surgeon to use this technique, known as transoral robotic surgery, with a different robot in 2009. Now he's partnering with PhD fellow Jack Faulkner, biomedical engineers at King's College London and the robot's manufacturer in this new set of clinical trials.
You've done very well. You've done very well.
Robert Hamilton was the second patient to undergo the procedure back in March. Diagnosed with a rare form of throat cancer, he had his salivary gland and muscle removed and is now cancer-free.
It's hard to understand it, and it's hard to, to realise that that's me on the table getting your throat cut open by a robot. Although, like, obviously Mr. Aroura's there and he's controlling it, but, it's just, it just doesn't seem real.
With throat cancer on the rise, there is, of course, a lot of focus on new technologies such as this, but the team here is also emphasising the need for prevention, in particular for more school-age boys to be given the vaccination against the cancer-causing virus HPV. Nonetheless, this kind of surgery will continue to be crucial. With 3 more months left on this trial, the team here at Guy's is hoping to help roll it out across the country. Harry Fawcett, ITV News.
Still to come on the programme, we'll have the weekend weather forecast, plus dine and fine, the park where feeding the ducks could cost you more than a loaf of bread. And getting back on track after the worst of years, BMX champion Kai White joins us live. Before that, members of London's Windrush Generation are being asked to share their memories to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the boat's arrival in Tilbury. Those who travelled on the Empire Windrush and settled here mostly from the Caribbean will be featured through their photographs and stories at the exhibition in Camden, but it will also highlight the many hardships they have faced. Ron K. Phillips reports.
I think there was 800 and odd.
Alfred Gardner was 22 years old when he boarded the Empire Windrush in Jamaica 75 years ago. He paid £28 for the journey, and he still remembers his first impression when the ship docked at Tilbury in Essex.
Everything was cold.
And what was life like then for a black man?
Life was what you made it.
Now 97, Alfred's life is the centrepiece of a photographic exhibition at Clapham Library about the Windrush Generation. He's one of only 2 known adult survivors from the original group. After he left the RAF, he worked as an engineer, married and raised 8 children. Over the years, he's seen it all: racism, cruelty, generosity and kindness. But his has been a life well lived.
What a brilliant life. Brilliant. If I could do it, I would do it all over.
The exhibition was put together by local photographer Jim Grover. The display features 9 stories, each focusing on a typical aspect of Caribbean life and culture.
You're going to be immersed in the distinctive Caribbean traditions like dominoes, like nine night, like the partner. If you're of the Caribbean community, you will discover people doing amazing things to keep your distinctive culture alive.
I think the exhibition is incredible.
An important part of the voyage through the generations is the stories of those who were born here. Selina Carty is 3rd generation, but has chosen to delve into ancestry as a career.
Now I'm a cultural and ancestral genealogist, helping all people to find and trace their history and heritage. Everybody knows we have a relevance, and that when we're looking at community and culture, but each one of us have intrinsic value in what it means now, what it meant then, and what it means in the future.
Also 3rd generation, Mark Richards is another person who stayed close to his roots. He supplies ready-made frozen Jamaican meals to people's homes and provides a listening ear.
They have a story to tell. Everyone's got a story to tell, and not everyone got someone to tell the story to. So when I go around, I'm privileged to be able to hear lots of different stories.
These portraits of a generation give an insight into the lives of the families who made their homes here 75 years ago. It's not all been plain sailing, and at times the going has been rough. But at 97, Alfred is still dancing, and he hasn't finished yet.
There's still things I'd love to do, but I won't be able to.
Why not?
I haven't got the money.
Ron K. Phillips, ITV News.
Next, Harrow Council is considering fining people who feed the ducks in Pinner Memorial Park. The council leader says feeding the birds bread will probably kill them. Catho Pata is at the park for us now. Kath, they're taking this very seriously down there.
Yes, I mean, coming to the park, especially on lovely sunny days like this, is something we all love to do. But it's not just about having picnics, it's also about feeding the ducks. Now, that's something that Harrow Council are trying to discourage. They say that it's bad for them, and it's true, feeding ducks can cause them damage to their poor little tummies. And of course, there are other people out here who aren't very happy with this new decision. I spoke to a couple of people who said they weren't aware of these new plans, and they're not really welcoming of the fact that the council are trying to fine them for feeding ducks.
Maybe they can put stalls of what is, edible or what's good for the ducks, and probably they can also make an income out of it, just send a £1 bags, because children like to do that.
It's a bit of a shame for families and kids who are coming to enjoy the park.
Even if it's bad for the duckies?
Well, if it's bad for the ducks, then it's got to stop, but as far as I'm aware, they look okay to me, but what do I know?
Now, of course, duck feeding and fines for duck feeding isn't something new. Ealing Council previously fined someone £150 for feeding the ducks. And that's exactly what Harrow Council are trying to replicate. But the question people here are asking is, if they can't feed the ducks, who will? And that's something that's bound to come up in the current consultation. But no matter what decision they make, it's not going to discourage people from enjoying lovely park weather.
No. Kath in Harrow, thank you. Next tonight to a man who embodies resilience. Olympic silver medalist Kai White has broken both his shoulders, knocked himself out and crashed 4 times in the last 9 months, but there is no chance he is allowing that to stop him achieving his BMX dreams at the Paris Olympics next year. The champion, who won European gold, World Championship silver and 2 World Cup medals last year, has been nicknamed the Prince of Peckham, and he is launching his own campaign to encourage a new generation of athletes. Kai, pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
How are the injuries?
The injuries are part of the sport.
Yeah?
It happens, and I'm fine with it. I'm getting on, I'm still training, working through the physio and getting stronger again.
I mean, so right now, what are you experiencing?
So right now I have my right shoulder blade, my scapula is broke. I think maybe 2 cracks in the top of it, and yeah, it's still in good use. It still works.
So it's not hurting that much?
It doesn't hurt. It's just super weak. That's
okay.
All. But yes, it's just training again.
Yeah, and do you need the upper body strength for being on your BMX?
Of course. Yeah. BMX is your whole body.
Yeah.
Your whole body, mainly your legs, is where you need the most power to get out of the start line first. But yeah, you always work on your arms and your shoulders to keep them strong. So when you do crash, they don't break. But
okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think that might mean for preparations for Paris then?
Paris is over a year away now. So okay. The main preparations is actually doing the races and qualifying points for Paris. So right now, my teammates are in Turkey.
Yeah.
They'll be racing tomorrow and Sunday and next week to gain points for our country, to gain spots.
Yeah.
For us to go to Olympics.
It's all about the build-up, isn't it?
Basically, yeah.
I mean, does it get you down a bit that when you can't be involved and when you can't operate at the level you want to be?
100%. I feel the last time I done my shoulder, which was 9 months ago, was way worse, and that one I was maybe this close to retiring, and then this one is just like it's just
another one.
Yeah, pain in the head. So. Yeah, it's part of the sport, so it happens. Yeah. I'm used to it now. But
tell us what you're doing with youngsters in Peckham.
So Peckham is obviously not the best known areas for being great. So just trying to get them into sport, getting them, make sure they're staying in the right path,
yeah.
Following the right people and doing the right things. And obviously BMX is a great sport in Peckham, and yeah, trying to get them into BMX.
And you can teach them about resilience. Kai, brilliant. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Take care. The ITV News continues at 6:30 with more on our top story. Here's a look ahead now with Geraint.
Coming up on the programme, Philip Schofield lays bare the impact of the past week. The former presenter says he's lost everything since he quit the show. But what next for ITV? A life sentence for the teenage Islamic State fanatic charged with plotting acts of terrorism. Boris Johnson tells the COVID inquiry that if it was up to him, he'd let them have all his WhatsApp messages. And it's an all-Manchester affair on Saturday as City take on United for the FA Cup. So what's at stake for both teams? Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Excitement is mounting in East London. West Ham play their first European Cup final in decades next week. Standing in the Hammers' way, the Italian side Fiorentina. The Europa Conference League final would be their first European trophy if they win since the heady days when Bobby Moore and Sir Geoff Hurst wore claret and blue. Anton Allen went to see the squad dreaming of that win and elevating themselves into club legends.
This goal gave West Ham players the chance to emulate the success of football legends.
Yes, he can!
In 1965, Bobby Moore, Martin Peters and Sir Geoff Hurst led the Hammers to European glory. Today, West Ham trained for Wednesday's Europa League Conference final against Fiorentina. If you're able to be successful in that conference final, would you like to see your group of boys one day honoured with a statue outside the London Stadium?
I don't know if we'll ever get a statue because we're talking about 3 English legends as well as West Ham legends because of what they've done for England in the World Cup. But I do believe that the players have got a great opportunity to be remembered by everybody at this club.
The final could be West Ham captain Declan Rice's last game for the Hammers. The Londoner's been linked to a move to Arsenal. Rice's current team says his leadership has been integral to their cup run.
His value for us as a team is undoubted. We are all aware of that, and as a team we have a lot of quality. Dec is a big part of that.
2 seasons of reaching the latter stages of European Cups have breathed new confidence into Hammers fans old and young.
Listen, how can we lose against Alphabet FC? Listen, airport that way, Prague is this way.
But most fans won't be at the final in Prague. The Hammers received just over 5,700 tickets. West Ham players are grateful for the supporters that will and won't be in the stadium.
We are taking that energy with us to Prague. We're happy about everyone that is going to be at the stadium, but also everyone that's going to be around, and we will give our best also for them.
None of these players were born the last time West Ham reached a European final, but this generation will be looking to write their own names in history. Now, they don't have a Bobby Moore or Sir Geoff Hurst, but they do have Declan Rice, an English superstar for this generation, who'll be hoping to lift his boys to European glory. Win or lose, David Moyes' men have set a new standard for their East London club's future, despite a season where they fought off relegation from the Premier League.
If we can give those young supporters something to believe that their club can reach finals, win finals, then I think it would be nothing but positive.
Will the weight of history be a burden too heavy or act as the shoulders that carry these players to their first major European title? Next week, after 90 minutes, they'll decide their place in history. Anton Allen, ITV News.
Before that, lots happening around London this weekend, so better have a look at the weather forecast. Here's Chris Page.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Yes, today across the capital, after having some cloudy skies to start this morning, the sunshine soon burnt through. And as we look towards the weekend, a lot of dry, fine and sunny weather on the cards. And when you're out of the breeze, it will still feel rather warm in that sunshine too. And we continue that story. We've had it for the last couple of weeks. This area of high pressure, it continues to feed in that easterly flow. But through much of this weekend, I actually suspect there'll be a lot of sunshine. Any cloud will very quickly burn back towards the coast. So as we go through this evening and overnight, as temperatures start to fall away, some of that cloud creeps its way in from the North Sea and through the Thames estuary. Some patchy amounts of cloud then as we start first thing tomorrow morning. But for most, temperatures should hold up between around 7 and 9 degrees. For tomorrow, yes, we start with the cloud cover, but things will brighten up very quickly as we work through the day. A fairly fine day in store, still a little breezy across eastern sides of the capital. The further west, though, the best of that sunshine and top temperatures up to 21 or 22 degrees. Don't forget that our UV levels remain fairly high as we go through the weekend. Still more sunshine on Sunday. Pollen's next.
Valent sponsors ITV London Weekend Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
And as for the all-important pollen forecast, we're at the beginning of the grass pollen season now, with those high temperatures expected as we go through the weekends. With some fairly light winds, particularly towards west, pollen levels will be at high. Bye-bye.
And that is how London is looking this Friday evening. The national news is next with Gerard Vincent. But from all of us here, thank you for watching and have a lovely weekend.